This looks great, except if you generate AI art, you've probably said that a lot. Maybe screamed it into your computer screen. I mean, probably not, but maybe. When I generate a fantasy city like this, I can think it looks cool, but I can also point to particular problems and a bunch of things I want to change. I've been using Midjourney for 3 years and generated nearly 25,000 images. In that time, I've discovered that there is one skill that separates someone from being a novice who uses Midjourney like a toy and someone who's able to use Midjourney to achieve exactly the results they had in mind. That skill is being able to make commission quality revisions. Basically, if AI art is going to be useful to you, you need to know how to fix it. In this video, I'm going to talk about how we can treat this fantasy city as a canvas and make highly specific revisions. I'll go step by step and show you all the strategies I would use to fix the anatomy on this dragon, clean up the wonk on some of these towers, make the banners show the same specific insignia, and add or remove detail from any particular place within your Midjourney images. My goal is to equip you with the tools you need to work on your images and refine them until they meet your standards and are ready as final images for your projects. Let's get into it. When Midjourney created this cityscape, I was using the quality parameter set to 4. This is great for getting a highly detailed scene, and I really like the look of this, but the editor maxes out to quality 1. So it's important to understand that if you just go into the editor and try to fix the anatomy of the dragon by erasing it and writing a new prompt, the new dragon you get, unless you get very lucky, will be worse than the one it was able to do originally. And that's because, even though Midjourney is only changing this small little piece, the image model tries to retain the context of the entire image during every step of diffusion. So it follows the way to solve that and to play to Midjourney's strengths is to control the context that Midjourney has to deal with. Instead of sending the image model the full zoomed out painting, crop in and look specifically at the part you want to fix, when Midjourney isn't distracted by all of the extra detail from your image. It can focus in and do its best to make the best dragon it's capable of. Obviously, you can crop in on your images however you want, but for simplicity and to visually show you how this is going to work, I'll be doing all of the cropping and image placement using my own tool, ImageRAG. This is the web app that I custom built for the express purpose of organizing and managing your workflows while refining AI art. It's the same tool I announced in my last video, and I've been getting great feedback from you all about it. If it's new to you, just so you know what you're looking at, this is ImageRAG. The layout might remind you a bit of ChatGPT. Here on the left, you have your projects. We can click New Project here, double click on the name to call it whatever we like. I'll just say City. And now I can drag my image in and highlight the first part we want to work on. In my tool, all of your images that you add to your project will show up on the right here. And an image is where you're always going to make and change your selections, what you're currently working on. And a collection is how you're going to make and integrate changes you make to those selections. So when I'm happy with what this red rectangle is highlighting, I can go to the Options panel and hit Create Collection. So my image is going to retain the entire painting. I can call this Master Copy, and my collection is the part we want Midjourney's image model to be aware of. We can call it my canvas. So when you highlight it instead of the image, we only see the piece of the image we cropped in on. When you're ready to make changes to this, click Download and Lock, and bring the image it downloads into the Midjourney editor. That's on the Edit tab. Now that our selection has been brought into the Midjourney canvas, we can use the Erase tool under Paint to draw over the parts of the dragon that don't make sense. We can highlight the sort of front torso area to get Midjourney to do a better job on its front legs, and obviously remove the tail that is coming out of the tip of his wing here by erasing a few of the things that we want to change, but leaving enough so that the context of the image fits right back into the original. We don't require very complicated prompting to get Midjourney to fix the anatomy errors with this dragon and get a hazy painting of a dragon over some hills. Now, this result is good if you just want Midjourney to fix some generation errors, but if you want to make specific revisions, you need to have a little bit more control. Say, for instance, it was part of your design brief to make this dragon's head be up instead of pointing straight forward like this. In the editor, we can grab any of these elements and move them around if we download the version of the image that has the fixed anatomy and add it back in again as another layer. If you erase everything but the dragon's head from the top layer and erase only the dragon's head from the bottom layer, with the top layer selected, you can now hold the Alt key on Windows to click and drag and move the head around and put it wherever you want. You can also bring your mouse to the corner of the layer and rotate it exactly the way you want. Now, if you erase all the way around where it's going, Midjourney will fill in the details in a logical way, even if you don't change your prompt at all. You could follow that same approach if you wanted to change the pose in any other ways, or make the wings bigger or smaller. Making 2 copies of the same layer lets you refine the placement, and assuming there's enough transparency between what you moved and the rest of the image, Midjourney will be able to fill in the gaps and make the pose or anatomy change make sense for the image. Once you're at this point, the way my tool makes this easier is it kept track of the master copy and where this piece we just made goes back into the scene. So if you download it from Midjourney, open the collection within ImageRAG and simply drag it here from your downloads to check in the change. When you've done that, you can preview it by clicking New, just to make sure nothing weird happened or find out you uploaded the wrong thing. This looks good. And you can click into the image to see it in the context of the entire scene. By the way, you can hold Shift and select both places to show old and new at the same time, see the before and after. And you can scroll to zoom in and get a closer look. When you know you like it, hit Accept All Changes, and your master copy will be updated with what we've changed. If that was your first time seeing that process and it seems kind of complicated, don't worry. I promise you'll get the hang of it quickly. Let's say the next thing you want to work on is these towers here. The tops of them look kind of funky, so it's not so hard. With the image highlighted, you can select one or both towers to fix them. Let's start with just one. Our selection is made, so now that we want to make a change, we select the canvas like you're painting. Click Download and Lock. Why do we lock the image? Well, this probably makes sense now. It's the tool's way of protecting you from accidentally messing up the selection while you're working on it in Midjourney. That's so it fits back in your master copy perfectly later on. Now, in Midjourney, I can click New and drag the image into the editor. It's as simple as erasing the weird top of this tower and writing a prompt like oil painting of a simple medieval tower with trees in the background. Now, you wait for it to generate, pick your favorite, download, and check it back into the collection. Before, after, look at it in the image, and if you like it, click Accept. It's as easy as that. But wait, we want the other tower to look the same too, right? Well, if the reason we're cropping in is to control the context that Midjourney has, it makes sense that to get the towers to look the same, you would want the good tower to be in the context of our canvas. So this time, instead of one, we will select them both. Go to the canvas, click Download and Lock. In Midjourney, click New and drag in what we downloaded. This time I'll actually drag it in twice to get 2 layers. On the top layer, I'll use Smart Select to select just the good tower, and we can paint out the old one that we want to fix. Now, drag the top layer into place so we have both towers looking the same, and I'll erase just a little bit more that doesn't fit in on this side. I'll change the prompt to 2 towers and click Generate. I guess I was a little sloppy with how I placed the tower, so the little pole thing on the top doesn't line up perfectly, but no worries. The other tower will tell Midjourney what this should look like, so I can erase it here. Also, the lighting looked a little off here too, so I'll erase that. But the context of the image teaches Midjourney exactly how the new one should look. So for the second generation, the alignment on the pole looks much more reasonable. We can now take this image and bring it back to ImageRAG. Check it in place of our old tower, and very quickly we can see the results look fantastic. I do sometimes see a slight blurring just because of Midjourney's compression, but we can overcome that with an upscale later. The point of that demonstration, though, was so that you understand that to create consistency throughout your scene, sometimes it's necessary to include more context than you're actually changing so that Midjourney's image model can reference the ground truth of what you're trying to generate. For this next edit, there's another way we can bring useful context into the scene too. And so for this one, let's shift our attention over to the banners here. If we were making these changes for a particular project, you could imagine that there might be very specific design requirements for what these banners look like. Maybe if this was for a book cover, this kingdom we're representing here would use a specific emblem. The other thing that my tool supports is bringing an emblem like that into your image as a temporary reference layer. Just because I don't have one, there aren't design requirements here, I'll just generate this quickly. But let's say for our banner, we want to have a golden turtle on it with an icon of a sword going up and down. ChatGPT 4.0 can give us something that meets that design brief, but just because of the style of painting, it's not something we can put directly onto our castle. So instead of cutting it out in the Midjourney editor, I'm going to bring this into ImageRAG and we can make it a part of our canvas too, just by dragging it into the collection. So if we select one of the banners from our painting, our canvas will now have the two side by side. So when we click download and lock and bring our canvas into Midjourney, it can reference our sample banner while it edits the one we actually care about. We can erase out the center for Midjourney to fill in. I'll paste in a simple prompt, and we can see out of these 4 images, it looks like we get one that, minus this green chevron, matches our precise design really, really well. To continue to clean this up, I can easily erase and regenerate any problem areas. And because I have such a specific idea, I can get a little precise here and spend some more time just regenerating it until it really feels like the banner I'm going for. That shadow is a little weird, but I don't think it'll show up too much when I'm zoomed out, so I can download this and check it back in just like before. If I click accept, now we can do the same thing again for the next banner. Though instead of the ChatGPT reference, now we can use the banner we just made as the ground truth for what it looks like. I'll just download the selection again and add it into the canvas too. I can delete the old one from 4.0, and now we can do the same thing we did earlier for the tower for these banners. I'll drag the layer in twice, copy the insignia, and put it onto this banner. Erase a little around here, and use the same prompt just to generate it again. Check it in, and accept. We could do the same thing for the third banner, even add a third reference to allow for a bit of diversity. I know the shadows are a little bit different and it's a little bit smaller, so we can download and lock, bring it into Midjourney, and let's change the shape of this banner so it matches the other one. Now I am going to go ahead and check in those changes, and on the whole, I'm thinking these 3 banners work pretty well to establish the kingdom of my city. I know those were the 3 things that I promised you in the intro, but there's a few more Midjourney tips I want to show you. So for the last change here, let's say we want to focus in and refine this area in the bottom right-hand corner. There's obviously still extra banners and insignia that we'd like to remove since they don't fit the design. And also, I'm feeling like these tents, the boats, and even all these people are just a bit of a mess to have in the foreground of our scene. So with this part selected, we can take the banners out of the canvas. That's just because we don't need them anymore as a reference layer, and hit download and lock to go into Midjourney and continue making changes to this whole section. It's important to know that As the part of the image we are working on gets bigger, we need to be careful about trying to add detail. Since Midjourney has a lot more to pay attention to, it's going to do a worse job at those fine little pieces. But this is going to be a great way to clean things up, because Midjourney is great at filling in the areas you erased as long as you are okay with it simplifying those areas. Right? Midjourney does a good job at continuing the texture of the castle wall, for example, or cleaning up the little shadows around our emblem, as long as it's not trying to redraw our turtle's feet. As I paint over and erase more and more, you can see that I'm trying to be careful to always leave enough so that the context of the scene will still make sense to Midjourney. Also, throughout the whole video so far, I have never erased anything on the very edge of my selection. Because if Midjourney redraws anything on the edges, it won't know what the rest of the image looks like. So it'll just come up with its best guess, and that best guess won't fit back into our original scene seamlessly like we've been seeing. But you can see I'm not going crazy with big sweeping erasures, because I want Midjourney to still understand that this is a castle wall and that this castle is on a coastline of some sort. But I also need to erase enough, because even these reflections are going to tell Midjourney that it should try to put a boat here if it sees a boat in the reflection of the water. And I don't want that, because I don't think Midjourney will do a good job generating a boat in this context. Basically, my advice is to be thoughtful and careful about what you erase and why, because the context of the image that you're working with is going to be even more powerful of a guide about what Midjourney is going to generate than whatever we end up writing in this prompt. Speaking of prompts, even though this scene is complex, we're going to keep the prompt very simple. Something like an oil painting of some tents set up as an encampment at the bottom of a castle. I'll click generate, but I hope it makes sense why we don't need to describe the details of what we care about nearly as carefully if they remain implied by what's left in the image. For some reason, the one on the top left didn't load, but you're still able to download it and look at it. A little weird, not sure why that happened. But what I want to show you now is what to do if, out of all of these generations, none of them are exactly what you were going for. But there's kind of a Frankenstein of you like one thing from one and a different thing from a different generation. To keep the things we like and to throw away the rest, what you'll want to do is make layers out of each of the generations that have something you like. So for each one, you can erase everything but the parts that you want to keep. For example, I like a lot of the tents from this one, and the way the stairs go down from the door. For a lot of them, I'm keeping part of the water we got so we can use it to finish erasing the boats from this area of the screen. And once we've chosen the parts that we like and care about the most, and it's set up in our canvas as different layers, we can just use one of them again as a base layer so that pretty much everything is filled in. Now it's as simple as doing another round of erasing around the seams of the things that don't fit together perfectly so that Midjourney can fill in the gaps and make the entire scene work as one cohesive image. And because they all came out of this same edit, a lot of the pieces actually integrate together naturally. So there really isn't too much to do in this final generation. So if we hop back into my tool, ImageRAG, we can see how we turned what was once a cluttered mess into a much cleaner scene that is actually incredibly accurate to the design we had in mind. Personally, I found this tool as a lifesaver when I want to work on and generate images while I have a specific idea in mind. I created this because it felt to me like in the AI art space, there are a lot of tech companies jumping to create the next most powerful model, but what was missing was anything to help you slow down and improve what we already have to a point where it's actually useful for creative projects. So based on everything I understood about image models, how they work, what they're capable of, and what they're not capable of, I built this as a way to manage and control context, not just in relation to a single image, but for an entire project at once. If you think you might want to use it too, my early bird special is still going on, which means you can lock in an annual price that is 50% off what it will normally be for the premium plan. And if you get it now, you get that price forever. But it's only for the first 500 annual subscribers. And then the sale is gone forever. So there's a link in the description if you want it. There are a ton of things that this workflow I've been showing unlocks. And I really believe that this is the tool that will bridge the gap between what creative people want out of their generations and what AI actually delivers. If you want to see how you can follow a similar workflow to put consistent characters into a particular place in any scene, well, I highly recommend you watch this video next. This is where I take my 2 dogs and put them into a painting together. But until then, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.